Greetings, this is Professor Welch as we now start the recording on final concepts to review for week 8. The first concept you need to review is that a historian does not generalize, just the facts, ma'am, but a politician does generalize to persuade others. Political scientists think practically, and politicians think abstractly, and this would indicate political scientists often train politicians. Rationality is based on reason. Irrationality would be the lack of reason. Sovereignty is an important concept. An example would be Turkey, as they exercise jurisdiction over Kuristan, Kurdistan, or Israel taking jurisdiction of the Gaza Strip. Legitimacy is the notion that we acknowledge the rightful roles of our leaders or our laws. So it's legitimate, like when the Supreme Court ruled that Baby Bush was the President of the United States, then he had his inaugural and was seen as a legitimate president and was recognized. Relating concerns in a way that connects them in an empirical manner, empirical manner, is the basis of theory building. Political science, they study politicians, and political sciences use a lot of empirical data. A hypothesis is an initial theory a researcher starts with to be proved with evidence. Unlike natural law, positive law, positive law, uses the spirit, spirit, of the law to make determinations. Sometimes a case can be pursued as both a criminal case and a civil case, such as the O.J. case, in which the state brought a case against O.J. and they didn't prove their case, and so there was no criminal liability. But in the civil area, a very big verdict of over $30 million was found against O.J. in the civil case. Another example would be if the federal government went after investment housing investors for their wrongdoing in a criminal way. And another example would be investors who lost money can bring their civil suit. So we'd have a criminal suit and a civil suit. The case of Marbury, Marbury, versus Madison is an important case, and it is very important because it provided the precedent for judicial review, and it laid down the rule that the president is subject to court decisions. President Nixon thought he was above the law and didn't have to turn over the Watergate tapes, and the Supreme Court said, no, we are the leader, and we have ruled you must. The president nominates federal judges to the United States court system, and the Senate must approve them in order for them to be appointed. The Founding Fathers argued that the U.S. Supreme Court in judicial review would lead to undue indictments by the court. The Founding Fathers didn't have much faith in them. Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts, has said judges should act with the ideal role as an umpire, passively watching the legal drama and ruling only on disputed points of procedure. You need to know the case of Lombard, Lombard, versus Louisiana. In this case, the Earl Warren Court supported protests, protests, ruling that African Americans who had refused a segregated lunch counter could not be prosecuted. The responsibilities of the legislative and executive powers often overlap, as the separation of powers is rarely clear-cut. And this can be evidenced by all of the executive orders made by the Obama administration and now being made by the Trump administration. In Europe, a cabinet is equivalent to the United States administration, the present administration. Now, looking more, people have the most direct impact through presidential system. The head of ministry is equivalent to the head of state in the United States. A monarchy is the only system that could guarantee the cooperation between the legislative and the judicial branches. The chief executive receives the most attention in both parliamentary and presidential system. The U.S. expands its cabinet. The president may appoint an official, anyone he wants, but the Congress must agree and provide the funds. Conservative use the term political economy, Political economy, to try and get back to the pure market system, as was advocated, and this would be by Adam Smith. Keynesian, Keynesian economics, advocates for increased government control of economics, and traditional laissez-faire argues for a hands-free. Between 1965 and 1973, the percentage of Americans living below the poverty line greatly decreased. Medical costs consume 18% of the United States GDP. America and Canada agree that government should be larger in terms of funding more welfare programs. There's an important political scientist named Ira, Sharkansky, who argued all modern states are welfare states, and all welfare states are incoherent. Military takeover is the most common response to serious domestic unrest. Jealousy is aroused in a changing society when during times of prosperity some people get rich faster than others. A period of prosperity might bring about a revolution when things improve for poor people and people start imagining a better future. They are no longer content with their lot, as they want improvement faster and even faster than the growing economy can deliver. Some states engage in state-sponsored terrorism despite officially denouncing terrorism. The crux of radical revolutionary thinking is the belief that it is possible to remake society. Terrorism rarely works, but it works primarily when brought against democratic nations. Hannah Arendt pointed out that rage is the fuel of revolution, but the greatest cause of rage is the massive corruption that's now found in some developing lands. According to Hannah Arendt, the American struggle is indeed a revolution, and the only complete revolution that was successful and ended in a democracy. So be sure and review these concepts prior to taking the final exam.